There's a reason I always look forward to the Bristol races more than any other race in the NASCAR schedule pretty much. People always ask me, Eric, what's your favorite track? What's your favorite race? And almost every single time I say it's Bristol because of amazing races like we just saw today. So let's talk about it. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Today's episode is sponsored by the Ridge Wallet. The Ridge is a minimalist front pocket wallet that helps you reevaluate your everyday carry. Launched by a father-son team and funded on Kickstarter in 2013, the Ridge now resides in the pockets of over 250,000 men and women. The Ridge helps you carry exactly what you need in a very efficient way, and honestly, it just feels cool. It's sleek to hold it in your hand. It's slim, RFID blocking, and comes with a lifetime guarantee. It's the last wallet you'll ever buy. It's available in titanium, aluminum, carbon fiber, or polycarbonate, and it's available in more than 12 different styles. And they also have a very special deal for fans of the show. You can get 10% off your order by going to ridgewallet.com/groovy. That's right, ridgewallet.com/groovy to get 10% off your order. You can check out that link in the description. It'll take you right there. Huge thank you to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring the show. So now let's get into it. Bristol review. We have a lot to discuss because a lot happened in this race. I'm going to, of course, talk a little bit about the racing we saw, some of the possible attendance issues that I'm sure a lot of you noticed, and then, of course, I'm going to look at our top finishing results, and then I'm going to talk about how this race stacks up against other races this year and where it lands on my Groovy gauge. So we're in for a full show this afternoon. Now I'm going to go and start today's episode by addressing the elephant in the room, or rather maybe the gaps in the stands. If you're watching the race on Fox Sports 1, you probably noticed that the corners of Bristol Motor Speedway were closed down. There was nobody seated in the turns. All the seating was on the front and the back stretch. This decision by Bristol Motor Speedway was likely made after last year's race, which granted was impacted heavily by rain, saw maybe 20,000, 30,000 people show up. It looks like for this spring race, they just decided to kind of undersell the venue to maybe make it look better on TV, because I will say this, when you saw the fans on the front and the back stretch, it looked fairly full. But yeah, seeing those empty corners definitely didn't look good. This race is an interesting question though, because for several years now, for a long time now in a lot of ways, fans have been asking for more short tracks on the NASCAR schedule, mainly because they love the racing at Bristol and Martinsville. And so fans are constantly these days bombarding NASCAR with requests for more short tracks. But seeing the attendance struggles for Bristol this weekend, I don't know, kind of raised some questions about that. I know that this race has been heavily impacted by weather the last several years. That's hurt the attendance in a lot of ways the last few years. But this year's race, I know there was a slight threat of rain, but ultimately rain never came into the picture on Sunday. And I know that the August race is likely going to sell a lot more tickets. Still not going to get close to a sellout, but it's likely going to have maybe double the crowd this one did. So I'm not saying Bristol's dying, Bristol's dead. Some people on Twitter I saw were already saying that Bristol should lose a date. Some people are saying we should get rid of one of the Bristol dates. And I'm just like, that blew my mind, because aren't these the same people that want more short tracks, and now we're trying to get rid of the best one on the schedule, in my opinion? That didn't make any sense to me, but I'll move on. The problem here is just why, if there are so many of these hardcore fans that are begging for NASCAR to go to more short tracks, why then did Texas Motor Speedway last weekend sell more tickets than Bristol? And if we compare the two, Bristol is right there in the middle of NASCAR country. You know, typically that area, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Virginia, all that, NASCAR country. Texas Motor Speedway, not NASCAR country. Tickets for Bristol's race were actually cheaper than most of the tickets for the Texas Motor Speedway race. Tickets for Texas Motor Speedway were $150, $200 each. Bristol, most of them were in the $90 to $100 range. So Bristol had cheaper tickets, a better location. It's a better racetrack in my opinion, and most people's opinion I would say, but it sold less tickets today than Texas Motor Speedway did last weekend. That doesn't make sense, especially when it feels like most of the fan base wants more Bristols. They don't want more Texases, they want more Bristols. This is why when fans say we should bring back Rockingham, we should bring back North Wilkesboro or whatever, or Nashville Fairgrounds, this is why NASCAR is skeptical, and this is why we've had some hang-ups, as was reported last week. I'll probably talk about it in a later episode. There's been some hang-ups with Nashville Fairgrounds. That might not work out. When Rockingham closed in 2004, or well, not when it closed, but when the Cup Series stopped going to Rockingham after 2004, it was because of attendance issues. People weren't going to that race anymore, despite the fact that it's there in North Carolina, almost a short track. I know it's not quite a short track, but right there in the middle of NASCAR country, it was still having attendance struggles. That's why NASCAR stopped going to it. But now fans want Rockingham back. I don't know. This is why I think NASCAR can't overreact to these things. When the Twitter mob gets upset about something, we need more short tracks, you know, we hate stage racing, you know, we hate the playoffs, we hate Kyle Busch, whatever it is. NASCAR can't overreact to these things. Because when they do, they jump away from Rockingham, they maybe jump back into a situation that isn't going to work out for the sport. NASCAR needs to step back and do their research here. They can't just make these snap decisions because, while it seems like fans really want more short tracks, the way they're supporting the sport with money currently doesn't entirely back that up. Martinsville a couple weeks ago had a pretty good crowd. Hard to estimate the number there, but it had a pretty good crowd. So, I'm not saying that the short track movement is dead or that nobody wants more short tracks. And I understand that Bristol has had weather issues, although this weekend, weather wasn't really an issue, so that's not much of an excuse. And I also know that Bristol is different than it used to be. Some fans insist upon Bristol being a single groove track right around the bottom where the bump and run is the only way to pass. So I understand that maybe this current configuration of Bristol isn't to everyone's liking. But that all being said, if Bristol is still underperforming when compared to Texas Motor Speedway, how can we expect NASCAR to fully invest in more short tracks like Bristol? If we're not already supporting the short tracks that are there, how are we supposed to expect NASCAR to fund more short tracks? That's the problem. I saw some people, like Clint Boyer, was blaming that hotels near the track are charging $300 a night and that's the reason for the slow attendance. Like, that's a fair argument, but it's also short-sighted. I go to races all the time, and if you're willing to get a hotel 20 or 30 minutes away from the track, you can usually get one for less than $100 a night. A decent hotel for less than $100 a night. That's what I did last weekend. I stayed at a hotel near Texas Motor Speedway. It was about 20 minutes away. Cost about $100 a night. I understand that's still expensive, and that is another issue with NASCAR. The fact that, the tickets aren't necessarily the most expensive part of a NASCAR race. It's the whole experience, because a lot of times you have to travel, pay for gas, pay for a flight, pay for hotels. So I understand that's a big issue, but NASCAR can't really affect what these hotels are doing. The hotels are going to charge what they're going to charge. If you have to stay right next to the track, yeah, you're going to pay $300 a night no matter where you go. If you're okay with staying 30 minutes away from the track, you can get a better deal. So Clint Boyer, I get what he's saying there, but he was kind of short-sighted in those comments. So I don't know where this leaves us. Like I said, I know the August race at Bristol, the night race, is going to sell a lot better. We're probably going to see a pretty good crowd for that one. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So I don't know, maybe this is a lot of nothing, but it was definitely a little weird seeing how mostly empty Bristol was. It looked like there was maybe 40,000 fans there, and that place seats more than 150K. So it was like less than a third full. It's weird. I don't know what else we can really do. It's Bristol. It put on, once again, one of the best shows NASCAR has, and if fans aren't going to pay to support it, despite, I think, fair ticket prices at the gate. Bristol's charging fair ticket prices. I mean, like I said, they're charged less at Bristol than they did at Texas Motor Speedway, and more people went to Texas Motor Speedway, which is a worse racetrack. Doesn't make sense to me. So, I don't know. Fans got to figure out what they want, and I think right now this is making NASCAR's decision going forward a lot harder than we'd want it to be. Anyway, y'all, I'm going to move on from that. That's just something I knew a lot of people were probably going to want me to talk about in this video. Let's talk about the top finishers, and I'll talk a little bit about the race as we do this. Here's your top 20 finishing results, as I like to show. Kyle Busch getting the win, his third win of the year, but it wasn't easy. He was not the best car in this race, probably ever. In fact, he even spun out or was involved in a wreck on lap 2. So he had to kind of work his way back up there throughout the day. Racing at Bristol, as I've hinted at a little bit, was outstanding today. They put that little traction compound, special rubbery stuff on the bottom lane, which helped the bottom groove a little bit. I honestly think the top and the bottom were pretty equal today at Bristol. It was one of the better Bristol races I've ever seen. This race a year ago was outstanding. The August race last year was outstanding. This race was outstanding. Bristol consistently is outstanding. This race was just more of the same greatness that we love about Bristol. Passing was hard but not impossible. The bump and run came into play more often than not. There was door slamming, there was contact, there were spins, there was tempers, there was frustration, there was controversy. This race had everything, and that's why it was amazing. But I'll get to that in a minute. I'll give you guys my Groovy gauge rating in just a moment. Talking about this race specifically, this race also had tire strategy, and that's ultimately what helped give Kyle Busch this victory. He was running third in the final run of the race before a caution came out. The two leaders, Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, elected to pit and take tires. Kyle Busch and a couple other guys, his brother Kurt, Daniel Suarez, Paul Menard, stayed out, and that allowed Kyle Busch to drive off in the final 15 laps and get the win. He had probably a top 5 car, maybe even a third place car in this race, but tire strategy ultimately is what won it. Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski seemingly guessed wrong when it came to tires, and that's what gave Kyle Busch his third win of the year. But there's one thing you'll hear, but everything I've just been talking about, every single driver I've mentioned pretty much so far has been a Joe Gibbs or a Penske driver, because yet again, Joe Gibbs and Penske were the class of the field. You see Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, they're finishing third and fourth. They both led a ton of laps in this race. Early on, Blaney looked like he might have had the best car. Joey Logano probably was the fastest car in this race, but like I said, that the call to take 4 tires at the end there probably did him in. That's what cost him this win. But still another strong day for Penske. 2 cars in the top 5. Brad Keselowski's not there because he seemingly got screwed by a questionable call by NASCAR at the end. Going into the final restart, there's kind of a weird jostling in the running order. As they were literally coming to take the green, NASCAR decided to take out their frustrations on Brad Keselowski. Keselowski didn't agree, but what driver ever does agree when NASCAR penalizes them? All I can say is it was screwy. I don't know who was at fault truly. If Keselowski really was not in the lane he was supposed to be in, then yes, he deserved to be penalized, and that was a dumb mistake. But it looked to me like there was just confusion all around. Probably not a good idea by NASCAR to throw the green in that situation. They should have run another lap or two under caution. So definitely didn't make NASCAR look good and hurt Brad Keselowski's finish. At least Keselowski can hang his hat on the fact that he is locked into the playoffs by already winning this year. So still, great day for Keselowski until the end. Good day for Penske overall. Joe Gibbs Racing, you only really see Kyle Busch there up in the top 5, but Denny Hamlin was strong. Martin Truex Jr. was strong. Eric Jones was even strong, but they all had issues at some point, which hurt their finishes. Hamlin did come back to finish 5th. I meant to say he was in the top 5. Hamlin did come back to finish 5th, so good for him. Kurt Busch, they're finishing 2nd. I gotta talk about him again because every week he impresses me more than the week before. I tweeted this out during the race. The 2 drivers that have impressed me more than anyone else this season are Ryan Newman and Kurt freaking Busch. Newman's helped make that 6 car look relevant again. Meanwhile, Kurt Busch, is it too early to start saying he could be an Elite 8, a round of 8 contender, maybe even a Championship 4 contender? He has just been so consistent, and this week he even showed that he could have winning speed if the tables go his direction or it goes his way. Kurt Busch, man, I know he's a veteran. Who knows? This could be his last season. We don't even know. He's only on a 1-year contract with Chip Ganassi. We don't know where he's going to be going at the end of this year, but if this is Kurt Busch's last season, he is going out on a high note, man. He said after the race that he was going to try and wreck Kyle Busch for the win if he could get to him, but he never quite did. 18 cars, probably just a little too fast for him, but it was a great finish. Really fun to see the Busch brothers battle it out, and Kurt Busch just continues to own the Chevy manufacturer banner. Like, he is just dominating for that team. Clint Bowyer led a lot of laps. Late in this race, though, he'd made contact with Joey Logano, cut his tire down. That's what hurt his finish. He was kind of unhappy with Logano. Looked like Logano came down into him and just hit his right front and cut down Bowyer's right front tire or messed something up in there. Hurt his finish, but still a solid day for Stewart-Haas Racing overall. As you can see, Suarez got another top 10, 2nd week in a row, and Kevin Harvick, given that he started this race, already 2 laps down because of failing inspection 3 times this morning, the fact that he came back for a top 15 is stupendous. Big shout out to Paul Menard, stayed on the lead lap all day, played the tire strategy right to help get himself a top 10. Ryan Newman as well was up in the top 10 pretty much all day long. Ryan Newman continues to make that car look relevant, man. Hendrick Motorsports, after a great week at Texas Motor Speedway where they had cars in the top 10, top 5 all day, they took a small step backwards at Bristol here. Early on, Chase Elliott had an issue with his power steering, ran into some troubles. He managed to finish 11th though, so not bad. Jimmy Johnson was in the top 10 most of the day, so he had a pretty solid performance. Nice to see that 48 team's starting to turn things around, I guess. Got a top 10, so not a bad day for Hendrick, but not a good day either, so. I do have to talk about Chase Elliott a little bit though, because his day wasn't perfectly clean. He had the power steering issue hit early in this race, but he managed to hang in there, stayed in the top 10, top 15 for a while there. Eventually did go a lap down pretty early, or in the middle of stage 3. So later stages of this race, he was a lap down, things weren't looking good. And then while he was in the free pass position, Chase Elliott seemed to, I'm not going to say, no, I will say, I think he intentionally wrecked Matt Tifft. At the time I'm filming this, I'm not sure if I'll be able to find a replay because Fox Sports literally only showed the replay once and then immediately stopped talking about it because it looked pretty glaringly obvious to me that Chase Elliott on the straightaway turned right up into Matt Tifft and spun him out on purpose so that Chase Elliott could get back on the lead lap. Chase Elliott's a nice guy. I don't mean to heap these strong allegations on him, but I don't know. They were on the straightaway. I think he intentionally spun him to get back on the lead lap. According to the NASCAR rulebook, if the free pass car is involved in the caution, they do not get the free pass. NASCAR seemed to ignore the rulebook right here and still gave Chase Elliott the free pass despite his involvement in this wreck. So even if you don't think Chase Elliott did it on purpose, he still shouldn't have gotten the free pass because he caused the wreck. So NASCAR threw the rulebook out right there. Fox Sports covered up for them perfectly. It was kind of sleazy all around. Sleazy on everyone's behalf. Fox Sports, Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Darrell Waltrip, NASCAR, Chase Elliott, everyone involved. Very sleazy. Sleaziest thing I've seen this season. I know Chase Elliott fans aren't going to be happy with me pointing that out, but it's the truth. He wrecked him, and it looked like it was on purpose, and NASCAR should have thrown the book at him, should have penalized him, or should have at least not let him get back on the lead lap, and they didn't. So, yeah, that was one of the largest glaring issues of today's race. Still, though, credit to Chase Elliott. He managed a car that seemed to have pretty iffy steering all day long and wheeled that thing home, made it all 500 laps, finished 11th. credit to him for sticking it out. But yeah, the fact that nobody on Fox mentioned that was a glaring issue to me. Needed to be talked about. He should have not been allowed to get back on the lead lap. Shout out Matt DiBenedetto, top 12. He actually ran better than that most of the day, or at least later in the race. He was up in the top 5 for a second there. Also the Dillon brothers, Ty Dillon won stage 1 after he stayed out on the final restart and actually beat Clint Boyer one-on-one, head-to-head, beat him by just a couple feet to the line. Ty Dillon won a stage, and he won it legitimately, like not because of stupid strategy. Like he straight up had to beat one of the best cars in the field. So shout out to Ty Dillon. I know a top 15 is just okay, but man, that was one of the highlights of the race. Bubba Wallace top 20, good for him. And Kyle Larson, the fact that he came back to finish 19th despite like wrecking twice or 3 times, something like that, and having all sorts of issues, that's actually kind of impressive. I'm impressed that they managed to get back to 19th after all the problems they had today. On the very first lap, I mentioned a minute ago, William Byron made contact with Eric Almirola. That put Almirola in the wall. Unfortunately, Eric Almirola was out of the race on lap 3, so really rough day for a guy who's been super duper consistent this year. Really unfortunate, and it wasn't his fault, so really sucked to be an Eric Almirola fan today, I'm sure. But other than that, those are all the most notable finishers. That's kind of just a synopsis of a lot of the major events from today's race, but there were so many little things, little battles, little dramas, little controversies throughout this thing that it was the most entertaining race I've watched this year. This race is why I like NASCAR more than other motorsports, because no other motorsport can put on racing like this on any sort of consistent basis. A race where this many drivers and cars had a chance to win, a race where there was this much passing for position, a race where there's this much contact, this much wheel-to-wheel, door-to-door action without wrecks. You know, there wasn't that many wrecks in this race. There's literally no other motorsport series in the world that can do that for 500 miles or 500 laps the way NASCAR did this afternoon. This race reminds me why I'm a NASCAR fan, and why I don't dislike other motorsports, but why I'm more of a NASCAR fan than anything else. Because of this type of racing right here today. This was a great race, and I guess with that being said, we should probably start talking about the Groovy Gauge, huh? Whoop-ha! The Groovy Gauge is back, yes. This is the 8th race of the season. These first 7 races, I think I've given 6 positive scores and only 1 negative score. Yeah, this season's been pretty good so far. Texas impressed more than we thought it would. Bristol Motor Speedway continues to live up to my super high expectations for it. Yeah, Bristol Motor Speedway. I think my highest score this year, before today at least, was Daytona. I gave it an 80% on this meter. Bristol, I'm giving it a pretty darn high score. We're going 95% on the Groovy Gauge. Is that high enough for you guys? Is that high enough? Should I go 96, 97? No, we'll stay at 90. Stay at 95. We'll stay at 95. 95% on the Groovy Gauge. I got to give a little bit of room to grow. There could be a race this year that's better than this. I'm sure there will be at some point. Maybe the Bristol race in August will be better than this. I don't know, but yeah, this race, I've said enough about it. It was outstanding. It reminds me why I want more short tracks, and we just need to put more butts in seats. We need to convince more people to go to Bristol, because this racing is outstanding. I'm sure some people won't like today's race just because Kyle Busch ended up winning. And granted, I kind of would have rathered an underdog or somebody who we haven't talked about as much this year get the win. You know, looked like Clint Boyer might get the win for a while there. Ryan Blaney had another solid day. I was rooting for one of them, but Kyle Busch, you can't deny his greatness. This ties him with Lee Petty on the all-time wins list. He's just getting closer and closer to setting more and more records. His greatness cannot really be underestimated at this point. I know we've talked all about Kyle Busch this year, and a lot of people are probably tired of it, but it's because he's doing amazing things. He got dumped on lap 2, got spun out, had damage all over the rear end of his race car, and he battled back for another 497 laps and won this thing. I know it took some pit strategy and everything, but Kyle Busch, man, there's a reason he's great, and there's a reason he's got a lot of fans despite some of the crazy things he does and says. It's because he wins, man. He just wins. Finds a way. I can respect that. I don't respect everything Kyle Busch does, but I can respect the heck out of that. So congrats to Kyle Busch, and yes, a great race today. No matter whether you like Kyle Busch or not, I think we can all agree this was an exciting NASCAR race. I had fun watching it. Good way to spend a Sunday afternoon. I'm really glad weather ultimately didn't come into play. I was worried that we might have some weather issues again, which I'm sure has hurt Bristol's attendance, like I said a minute ago, but yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that later. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I appreciate your support so much. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, continue the conversation over there. You can get your own Out of the Groove t-shirt down by the description if you want to support me, support the show. Also, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Shout out Michael Harrison, at Jews of the Stars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Effective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Tim Shingen, Jason Arlong, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dannison, Mika Suzuki, Adam Lean, and the rest of these amazing Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for continuing to support me and support the show. Hoping to take this show to some big and great places sometime soon, and a lot of this thanks to the support I get from you all on Patreon. If you also want to become a supporter over there, you can check out that top link down in the description. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back later this week with more Out of the Groove episodes. Should have a couple more episodes this week, so get excited for that. Gonna have a lot to talk about, I'm sure. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you guys again very soon.